I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. You are watching the Cryptid Podcast, and as usual, I'm your host, Dan Hamilton. You guys, I got a really cool guest on, and I have an author who was talking about a new book that he's going to be putting out. I posted a story on Reddit, and he would like to use it, and I said sure. So before I bring Dan on, you guys, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support you show the show. If you've had an encounter like to come on the show, please send me an email at thecryptidpodcast72 at gmail.com. That's thecryptidpodcast72 at gmail.com. Without further ado, everybody, let's welcome our guest, Dan, to the show. Dan, how's it going, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. The two DHs, the Dan H
Yeah.
is here.
It's funny, Dan H and Dan H. So
Yeah, and we've got the facial hair, the ball caps, the glasses going.
yeah,
Two big guys.
It's weird. Yeah, I'm a pretty big guy. So I posted just, my encounter on Reddit, and I don't know how long it was up there, and all of a sudden I get a message from you, and it was kind of funny. I said, can I think about it? And you're like, no.
Yeah, those are my exact words. No, you can't think about it. It's a great story. I need it.
And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I found out that you had some encounters, and I'm like, well, when can you come on the show? And next thing you know, here you are. So
yeah, I'm pretty easy going when it comes to coming on podcasts. So I've been on a ton of them.
Yeah.
So many I can't remember half of the names of them. But when I listened to your intro, I was like, I think I've listened to your show before. I
am on Spotify.
Yeah, it was very, very familiar. I'm like, hold on a second. So it's a small world, right?
Yeah.
And when we travel in the same circles, like with the paranormal and the cryptids and the woo-woo, we all kind of tend to end up in the same place every once in a while.
Yeah, that's
or eventually. So,
well, that's truth. So you said you've had quite a few encounters of not just cryptids, but what else have you had encounters with?
So I know you focus mainly on cryptid stuff, but I'm sure your listeners, like I said, have interest in all things paranormal, whether it's spirits or non-entities or human or non-human entities or UFOs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a well-rounded person in the fact that I've encountered everything.
Yeah, same here.
I grew up in a haunted house. So that's probably where my story started, but yeah. Obviously wasn't cryptid, but we moved into a home out in the country. So just to let your viewers know, I'm from Toronto, Canada, and my parents, back when I was 3 years old, they wanted to get out of the city. They saw, cities changed a lot in the past 30 years. Way too busy, way too congested, polluted, all sorts of things, just like anywhere else, any big city. And my dad always had dreams of living in the country. The rural, the farms, surrounded by farms, the dirt roads, the yellow school bus at the end of the laneway picking you up, all that sort of thing. So he found a property in an area called Caledon. It's about an hour and a half northwest of Toronto. And like I said, I was 3 years old at the time. When we moved in, almost immediately, I started having terrifying nightmares.
Okay.
And when you're a 3-year-old, usually it's like the boogeyman, like the guy in the closet, the guy under the bed, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I was having these nightmares of these endless fields of machinations and clogs spinning, almost like the workings of a Swiss watch kind of thing, almost like a steampunk looking thing. And in all of the dreams, my father would get caught in one of these machines, and he would be like decapitated and eviscerated. His arms and legs would get ripped off, things like that. That's not stuff a 3-year-old comes up with. especially back in the 70s. Like this is probably around 1975, 76. And like heavy stuff for a 3-year-old to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be hyperventilating as I slept because I was so scared. And my mom would come into the room, wake me up, and she said I would always be pointing at the man in the corner of the room. She says, there's a man there. And we found out eventually by talking to the neighbors. Like our nearest neighbor was like probably 500-600 yards away, because we're out in the country. And the neighbor said that, so they told us that the former owner had committed suicide in the basement. And he wasn't a good person. He was a bit of a drunk, drug user, used to beat his wife and his son. And the neighbors often mentioned how much that I looked like his son, like a striking resemblance. So we figured that, well, at the time we didn't figure it was a spirit. We just chalked up a kid with an imagination having bad dreams. And this went on for years and years. And my mom and dad, they would hear someone walking on the roof. My dad would go out there with a flashlight. There's nobody up there. It's not
right.
And it's bipedal. It's not like a scurrying. It's like someone boom, boom,
yep.
boom. And he would go out there with a flashlight. There's nobody there. The thermostat would move on its own. Sometimes it'd be so hot in the house, or something would be freezing, depending on the time of year. The washing machine would turn off by itself, and the dryer would come on by itself, all sorts of weird stuff. And then one day my mom and a friend of hers decided to go to see a psychic just for fun. And the guy, when they called, his wife took their names and everything and set up the appointment. And she said, if you have anybody you'd like my husband to connect to or speak about, bring photos of them. She said, but when you come, she said, place some face down on the table, so he doesn't know what the picture is about. So when they went in and it was her turn to be read, she went in and she put my picture down and my sister's picture down, like face down. And the guy's looking at her and he goes, and she didn't say anything to him. And he goes, do you believe you have a ghost in your house? My mom was like, she's pretty open to that sort of thing. She's like, yeah. She's like, I think, there's been weird stuff going on over the years. And he looked her dead in the eye and he said, he does not like your son. And he reached over and picked up my picture and flipped it over. And it was like, whoa.
Okay.
Weird. Now, you're that kind of got you going a little bit. Do we have a similar...
I'll tell you off camera, man. I'll tell you off camera. I don't like talking about this stuff, man. Because I believe when you start introducing it or talking about it, it starts manifesting something somewhere. And I'll tell you why I got rid of my old podcast. It was absolutely terrifying. But so after that, and again, that is my anxiety just kicked up because, and I'll tell you off camera.
Okay.
So when you had messaged me back and forth, because now this just kind of sets like a ground, a base for me to believe that you are very, and I say grounded, meaning you have the ability to pull things to you, whether you want to or not.
Oh yeah, big
and
time.
I think okay, here's the thing, and I've heard people ask me this: what blood type are you?
You know what? I wish I knew. It's been so long. I have no idea, but I know where you're getting at. I've heard this on other podcasts before, and I'm dying to find out.
Yeah. Well, see, I was just on one. I have negative blood type.
Okay.
And on both palms of my hands, I have an M on both palms of my hand. So
yeah, I think I have the M's too.
Yeah, I think people with
negative blood type, isn't it something about O negative or something, or
negative blood in general?
Okay.
And it's really weird. I didn't really know anything about that, but so how old were you when you had what you believe to be your first cryptid or your first UFO encounter?
Okay, so I had my first cryptid encounter as an adult. This is probably about 2012.
Okay.
And so I used to be a correctional officer. Did it for, okay. We have some similarities going, I guess.
Bro,
we'll talk.
I was a correctional officer as well.
Really?
For the state of Tennessee, yeah.
That's
absolutely.
crazy. That's crazy.
Okay.
So I think you and I are switched at birth or long lost something. So yeah, okay. And you know what's funny? I'll tell the story in a second. I find that there's a lot of correctional officers that are big into the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have interviewed, like when I had my own podcast, I've interviewed several people not knowing that they were COs. And then, you start talking to them. They're like, oh yeah, like I've been a CO for like 11 years, or I used to work in a jail for 12 years. And it's like, what is it about jails or correctional facilities?
Bro, look at the environment. Look at the environment.
I guess, but we all choose to go in there. Right?
I don't know, man.
No one put a gun to my head and made me do it, but
No.
I did it for 18 years, and that was long enough. But anywho, I used to work in the admitting and discharge area where the guys would come in and out from the courts. The police would bring in the
new intake.
Arrival. Yep, new intake.
God bless America, man. And, come on now.
Hey, I'm Canadian. So this one day we used to do like 6 to 2 Monday to Friday down there. Mm-hmm. Pretty early to start, but you got out of there at 2:00. And if it was a beautiful summer day, you've got the whole rest of the day to enjoy yourself. Mm-hmm. And it beats 12 hours on the living unit sometimes too.
Yep.
So I'm driving home. It's summertime. Beautiful day. I've got window down, my arm hanging out, and I'm going up Highway 25 from a town called Milton. And I'll tell people where it is. I don't care. And there's a cave system at the top of this hill. It's like a huge grade that goes up. And then it turns into an S-bend for a short time, and then it straightens out and keeps going. So I'm driving up, beautiful day, window open, arm out, and I look over and I don't know why I looked. It was, that's another part of the woo. And I looked over, and there's this little man, about 18 inches tall. He's wearing it looks like a deerskin vest with like red squirrel furry sleeves. He's got a walking stick, and he's standing in the ditch on the opposite side of the road, and it's all forest around there. It's all ferns and hardwood forest. And I look over and I lock this guy. We looked eye to eye. And do you know that the comedian Jeff Dunham with the puppets?
Yes. Yep.
You know Walter, the old man puppet that he has? This guy looked just like Walter, the puppet. Like the same face and same, but he had black hair, not the gray hair. And that's the best way I can describe his looks, because he almost looks like a hardcore Eastern European, like when you see people from Bulgaria or Belarus or wherever. Mm-hmm. Those high cheekbones and thicker top part of their head. Mm-hmm. And I looked at this guy, and he looked at me, and I was like, "What the heck is that's a man?" And he's like 1.5 feet tall. And there's cars ahead of me, so I had to kind of take my eyes off real quick to make sure I don't run into the back of somebody. And when I looked back, he was gone. And I was like, what the heck? And, I kept that story to myself for years. Like, I'll talk about ghosts, and I could tell people, oh, yeah, I saw a UFO or whatever. But how do you say I saw a little man?
You saw a little person.
Yeah, a little person of the forest. Right?
Yeah.
Like, is that guy an elf? Is he a gnome? Is he like a fairy? Like it's crazy. And so the best part about talking to people in the same circles is getting to meet others who have had encounters. Mm-hmm. And so I met a guy from my area, and we were talking about Bigfoot, because this guy was like a bit of a Bigfoot nerd like me. And I didn't even bring up my sighting, not one bit. And he says, I got a story to tell you. He says, I don't tell too many people this. I'm like, okay. So he was out in an area, a little town called Tweed. and it's probably like 3 hours east of here. Beautiful little area. And he was out there looking for Bigfoot. So he parks his truck. He found a trail system, and he parks his truck. He walks into the bush. He gets maybe 300-400 yards in, and it's all forest, pine and hardwood and everything. Mm-hmm. And it opens up into a little bit of a clearing. And it was a beautiful sunny day. And he stops. He's kind of looking around. He looks to his right, and there's a little man standing just beyond the edge of a pine tree, about 18 inches tall. And he says this guy had a deerskin jacket on with red squirrel fur sleeves. And the only difference between my sighting and his, he says the guy was wearing a cap, like a Robin Hood style cap, like
Shut
the one
up.
And I said, what did you do? He says, well, I'm looking at this thing, and your brain is trying to comprehend what you're looking at. He says the guy had his eyes closed and he has his face looking towards the sun. He was like sunbathing, right? When it's a nice day, oh, that feels so nice, right? I said, what'd you do? He says, I said hello. So as soon as he said hello, this little guy snapped out of it and ran to the next pine tree, which is maybe 10 yards away. And he said he called it a thing. He said this thing, or this little man, started growling and snarling and spitting at me, like trying to scare him off. And he says, I didn't know what to do. He said, then he started to stomp on the ground, like in a rhythm, and he started pumping his fist. And he's like, in his head, he's summoning others, or he's summoning something. Mm-hmm. I need to get the hell out of here. Yeah. So he turned around, he bolted back to his pickup truck, and he hauled ass out of there. But for this guy who I just met, and we got into this conversation, for him to tell me all that, and it was like almost my guy to a T, with the outfit and everything. And man, like I'm fairly new to Reddit,
right?
That's where we got connected, and the amount of people who've seen these little people is crazy.
You got to be careful. So let me ask you this real quick. I just wrote down a question. So what was the name of that town again?
Tweed.
Okay, so do you know what First Nation tribes are up around that area?
I do not. But the guy that I saw, there's no, like, the closest First Nation is probably an hour away. But there's a cave system at the top of that escarpment, mm-hmm. and apparently it's massive. Like, it's too small for people to get into. But I thought, what a perfect place for these guys to live.
Right. And the Native Americans here in the States, I've heard mixed stories with the little people. One, they're tricksters, they're aggressive, or two, they're very helpful. If someone is lost, they try to guide them back to an area to where they can be found. Mm-hmm. Things like that. But yeah, it's awesome that you and this guy that you talked to literally describe the same person
or the same type of person. It's like someone looking at you and me and describing them pretty much, the same, right?
Yeah.
So just his guy had a cap on and no walking stick, and mine didn't have a hat and he had like a little walking stick.
So after that happened, what other events?
For me?
Yeah.
So I became a part of a Facebook group called Ontario Sasquatch. It's run by a friend of mine. He's a friend now. His name is Peter Smith. And he is an ex-scientist. He's retired. Very smart man. But he has a fascination for Sasquatch. 100% believer. And, when I was getting into my paranormal life, for lack of a better word, I was focused on spirits, quote unquote demons, mm-hmm. Non-human entities, because I've seen a lot of weird stuff. And I didn't give Bigfoot too much thought. Didn't know what a dog man was, didn't know what a crawler was, all sorts of things. But And here's one of the things that I hope most of your audience is kind of open to, is like the woo-woo part of Sasquatch, because I think that they are more paranormal than we give them credit for. Like, the thing with people who research Sasquatch or Bigfoot, there's two camps. There's the one camp where they say, well, they're more paranormal. They can control the vibrational rate. That's why you don't. Mm-hmm. That's how they disappear out of the blue. And then there's people that are adamant. They say there's a flesh and blood creature. It's just an unrecognized or undiscovered type of bipedal, Gigantopithecus hominid.
Yep.
And you know what? I've heard people go to these conventions, and you've got the two groups on either side of the room, and they're like almost getting into a fight over this sort of thing. Yeah. But in the beginning, I would have said it was just flesh and blood. It's just some big hairy ape-like creature that's too smart for our own good.
Right.
But so I have to preface the story with I got involved with a gentleman by the name of John, and that's his real name. I talk about him in my first book quite a bit, and we became good friends. He was having major issues with a poltergeist in his home, to the point where he's getting attacked every night. Mm. Like, he's getting punched, he's getting pushed into the fridge, he's getting almost thrown down a flight of stairs, all sorts of stuff. And I discovered that I had some clairvoyant abilities. And one of the things that I discovered was how to remote view. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've heard about remote viewing. Mm-hmm. Now, my thing, I call it remote viewing because I don't have a better term for it. But usually someone writes down a number, coordinates on a piece of paper. The person who's remote viewing gets this number in this envelope. They don't look at it, and they just kind of lay down, close their eyes, and they get images, and then they write everything down. So my thing, and this gentleman, John, he can do the exact same thing. And I know others who can do it, is my subconscious goes to a different location in real time. I'm awake. There's no coordinates written down. And usually I go from photographs. Like, if someone contacts me and says, hey, I think there's something going on in my house, and they'll send me a couple photos of where the most activity is. I can go there subconsciously, and I say, oh yeah, okay, it's an old man. He's confused. That was his house 50 years ago. He doesn't know why you're there, kind of thing. And I can sometimes communicate with the spirit. And this is remote. Like, I've helped people in Australia. I helped a lady in Illinois, all over the place. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to explain how I do it. It's just something that happens.
It just happens.
It's just one of those things. The universe is a crazy place. So Peter from Ontario Sasquatch, he says, could you remote view Sasquatch? I was like, man, I've never even, that's, never even considered doing that. So what I didn't know is he asked John to do it and me to do it without us knowing. And I was in this room here. I'm in my family room. And I closed my eyes. So he asked me to do a specific area up in a city called North Bay, Ontario. It's maybe a city of 60,000 people. It's about a 3 or 4 hour drive north of Toronto. And so I closed my eyes, and he didn't give me any coordinates or anything, like nothing to go by. And it's almost like it was kind of meant to be, if that's, if that makes sense or not. So I closed my eyes. It was broad daylight out. And when I closed my eyes, I suddenly found myself hovering like Superman above this wooded area. And if you go to Northern Ontario, lots of rocks. Like, they call it the Canadian Shield, because it's all the rocks that got pushed down by the Ice Age and formed and everything. But that's why there's not a lot of homes in Northern Ontario, because it's boulders and rocks and stuff mixed with boreal forest. So I'm floating above, looking down, and everything's in full color. It's like we're watching a TV show.
Right.
And then seconds later, and I'll swear on the life of my kids that this happened, I'm standing on the forest floor in my subconscious being, or however you want to say it.
Right.
And the weird thing is, everything was black and blue. Now, a lot of people, when they say they've done this type of remote viewing, sometimes things are in black and white, like you're watching an old movie. But mine was like a black and a cobalt colored blue, almost like your hat, the color. So the trees, the leaves, the ground were this cobalt blue, and the sky was black, like the air was black.
Okay.
And I'm standing there, and I look to my right, and I don't know what the timing of this. I don't know but it's weird. And you know what? I've told this story so many times, and I still get like goosebumps telling it, and flustered, and don't really know how to explain it properly. But I look to my right, and a doorway formed, just like a rectangular doorway you would have in your house, but like out of the air. It just pops open, and standing in the doorway is a Sasquatch with a conical head. And it's about, so I'm 6'7". I'm a big guy. It was probably maybe a foot taller than me. And it walks out of this doorway, and it walks in front of me, and it looks at me, walk eye to eye, and it shoots me like the dirtiest look, like what the hell are you doing here? And it just keeps walking. And I'm like, what the heck am I seeing? Like, what's going on here? Like the most surreal thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And I turn my head back to the doorway, and there's this other one right in front of me, and it's a juvenile. It's probably about 6 feet tall. And this one, the top of its head was flat. And I've heard people say that the juveniles and the females have the flat top of the head, and the males have the conical head. And this thing was right in my face. It's like a curious kid. Like if you've been to the zoo and the monkeys are behind glass,
yeah,
you can get really close to them, and they're tilting their heads and making a face. And this thing was right in my face. And seconds later, the mother, who's probably about my height, comes and grabs him and shoots me a dirty look, and pulls him off to the side and goes in the same direction as the first one. And then I look to my right again to this doorway, which is still there, like hanging in the air. 3 more males walk out, and each one was bigger than the last one, or yeah. And they all looked at me. They all knew I was there. And the biggest one, he was huge. He was like 9 feet, maybe a little taller. He was the last one to walk in front of me, and he shoots me a look, kind of like what the hell are you doing kind of thing, or
yeah.
But they knew I was there.
Like you made eye contact with these.
They could see me. Like that young one, he got right up my face. Like, oh, what's this? Like what's this guy doing here, right? And I opened my eyes. I'm back in my living room, and I was like, what the hell is that? Like, what did I just see? And I'm like, I couldn't have made that up, right? Like, I've got a good imagination, but not that good.
Right.
So I went up to North Bay probably about a month or 2 later to meet Peter and his wife, Christine, and some other Sasquatch researchers. And we went to the same area. And I hadn't told the other people. I think I told Peter about it and Christine, but I didn't tell these other people because I didn't really know them. That was the first time meeting them. And the one guy, his name is Jim. He's been going into this location for years. He's had several interactions with them. He's seen them physically. He gifts them with food, apples, peanut butter, all sorts of stuff. And we went in. It was probably about 4 a.m. Like we went in, pretty early, and it was dark. And I said to him, I stopped him. I said, Jim, how many do you think live in here? He goes, oh, he said, He says, I think there's a juvenile, a mother, and 4 males. And I went, pardon? And that's exactly what I saw. Juvenile, a mom, and 4 males. And I went, really? And I was like, man, I was like, what's going on here? Like, why? Like, what's the universe doing here, right?
Yeah.
And I told him eventually, and he's like, oh yeah, that's pretty. He's a real laid back, kind of guy. He's like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of cool. Like, yeah, he believed me, but yeah, he's seen this family that I quote unquote remote view in this same area, and it was a nice validation. It was just like the guy with the little man, right? A validation for me,
right?
And yeah, just wild.
So let me ask you a question about each one of these.
Okay.
Now you said the sky was all black, but the grass, the trees, the ground, was all this cobalt blue. And when this, I'm gonna say portal opened up.
Yeah, it was a portal, guaranteed.
When it opened up and you saw, were they in color or were they in a cobalt blue as well?
So when they were standing in the doorway, it was like their silhouette.
Okay.
Like you see on the decals and pictures, like people stick in the back of their trucks with the conical head and the big long arms hanging to their knees and stuff. But when they stepped out, they were this cobalt blue, and I could see their features. I could see their eyes like blinking, but it was like if I had taken a picture of them and I drew them or colored them in a different color. It was so bizarre. And so getting back to when John, the other guy, when he remote viewed the same area, he said his was in black and white, like watching an old black and white movie. And he said he popped in to wherever he was in the bush, and he says there was only one, and he said it was a massive male, and he appeared behind it. And he said, Dan, he said, as soon as I popped in behind it, he says, it knew I was there because it stopped in its tracks. And he said, it kind of looked over its shoulder, like didn't turn right around, but it kind of looked over its shoulder, and it waved its hand like in a dismissive way. And he said, it pushed me out. He said, I was sitting back in my living room, like in my chair. And he and I have tried to do it again, like remote view the same area, and we can't do it. It's almost like they put up a barrier, like, and this is where all the woo woo and the paranormal come into play.
And my question here is, do you think that he jumped in before you did, or did you jump in before him and then wait? The large one that he saw was probably the large one that you saw.
Well, yeah,
and
for sure.
It just, I'm not going through this again. Just dismissed him.
No one's ever said that to me before, but that sounds probably what happened.
Okay, so let's go through this. So from what I am understanding, you probably saw like an older sibling of the juvenile, or maybe
they all seem to get taller. The males did. It's like those Russian nesting dolls. You take the dolls out and they get bigger and bigger. It was almost like that, other than the juvenile and the mom kind of in the beginning there.
Right. And each one of them literally looked you in the eyes, and what you said was there was a gambit of emotions from them. One looked pissed off, one looked confused. The juvenile was like, what's going on?
Yeah, the juvenile was like, oh, what is this? Like, this is cool. Like, he was like, literally, like you see people take TikTok videos being at the zoo, like looking at the gorillas through the glass, and they're right up there. And it was just like that. That's like just like a little kid would a human would go up to a monkey and go, oh, look at the monkey, right? Like, and the mom came by, kind of grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, and
just like a mom would do,
and said, let's keep going.
Get away from him.
Get away from this human monkey who shouldn't be here, right?
Exactly. And I think John might have popped in after you did.
Maybe, probably.
Because here's the thing. My thinking is they all left the portal. They all moved to one location, or they were traveling in a direction. Yep. Who's to say after, and I'm guessing is probably the dad, the large male.
Yeah, grandpa or the dad there.
Yeah, as he's leaving and walks by you and gives you this look like, you know, and then who's to say after you are now back in your physical reality,
Yeah.
Your buddy John pops in later down the pathway behind him.
You know, no one's ever brought this up before, but you're probably right.
I mean, that's crazy.
It makes sense. But
so,
you know what the other thing too, you know, about the portal is I want to know where they came from. Like, are they jumping from one? Like, are they going from Minnesota to Ontario? Are they going from a different dimension to our dimension?
I've heard different things. So that one you just said, from one dimension to another. I've also heard that they use it to travel. I've also heard that, you know, travel over great distances. Mm-hmm. But I've also heard a couple of times that they utilize nature, like trees. Like
the energy from the trees.
They'll open a portal in a tree and they'll walk through that tree, like into the tree, and then they're using that to maybe go to another area of the wilderness, or, you know, another state or whatever. It's
there's a book on I have it. It's behind me somewhere, and I had the author on my podcast, but the cover, it's a Sasquatch coming out of a tree.
Yeah,
like there's a portal behind him, and it's like
yeah, it makes you think. So after you had this, so what happened next in your experiences that you've had? Because that's an amazing experience. So
yeah, and you know what? I haven't found, like, listened to a lot of podcasts, especially more and more cryptid ones than the ghost ones these days, and I've never heard anyone else talk about remote viewing them like I have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm sure there have people who have tried it or have done it. They just don't speak about it because maybe they think, well, people think I'm lying or, you know, full of crap or crazy or whatever. But I know what I saw, you know, and like I said, I swear on the lives of my kids that it happened. And I've remote viewed other places and things since then, and had some bizarre interaction with spirits.
Yeah.
And, you know, nasty things, but not any cryptids. So when people say, have you seen a Sasquatch? I usually say, well, depending on the person I'm talking to, like if I get a good vibe from them, I'll tell them, yeah, I've seen like 6 of them.
Yeah.
All at once. But this is how it happened. It wasn't physical. I wasn't physically in the bush. You know, they weren't throwing rocks at me, or I wasn't getting the wood knocks or the growls or anything.
Right.
But usually I say, no, I haven't seen one physically, but, you know, and I haven't seen one in color, in flesh and blood.
Yeah.
I've had lots of interactions with them. I've had rocks thrown at me. I've been growled at a couple times. I've had a wood knocking conversation with them, gifted stuff and went back, and, you know, they've taken things and left little gifts for us behind, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But as for, like I said, I've tried to remote view them since many times. I just can't do it.
Let me ask you,
so
did you try to remote view to the same area?
Yes.
Okay. So if that large one had the ability to dismiss your friend with the wave of a hand, you've got to think about it this way. And again, you're making my head hurt, because I'm really starting to think about this a lot. Is that this just kind of gives more merit to the woo side of it, is that they have the ability to block that area from you. You were an invader. You invaded their private time. You left their home. You know. Yeah. You should try to do another place. Like, you should try to do a remote review of like some place in the United States.
People have, usually, like I said, I need photos to go by, and there are people that have connected with Peter, and he's mentioned the remote viewing session that I did, and he'll send me coordinates, on Google Maps, like an overview of a place, and he'll say, "What do you pick up here?" And this isn't more. It's not like the first time with the portal and the cobalt blue, but I'll pick up where they are, and I'll say, "Okay, they're on the other side of the river. There's like a small clearing there. That's where they hang out." Mm-hmm. And he won't tell me that he's already spoken to the landowners, and he'll come back and say, "Yeah," he says, "that's where they see them all the time, in that clearing." He says, "You were spot on." So I'm still zoning in on their location, their energy, but I'm not seeing them.
Right. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Have you ever heard of Owl Moon Labs?
No.
Okay.
Owl Moon?
Owl.
Like A-L?
O-W-L. Owl.
Oh, okay.
Moon, Owl Moon Labs.
Oh, owl.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So Daryl Adams owned Owl Moon Labs. It's in Oregon. And he sent me some pictures. I'll show you some pictures of some stuff that's been going on. Now, he doesn't live there anymore. He is now in Oklahoma. But here's some pictures that he had sent me. So this one here, if you see the tree that's in the middle of the circle.
Yeah, it looks like something. It looks like the predator, like something cloaking.
Yeah.
Almost,
if you look to the left of that tree, you kind of make out the back. And here is another picture that was taken before this one. And there it is. You can see the right side of its body, its left butt cheek, its left back, hamstring.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's a big one. It almost looks like a juvenile.
So do you need like an overhead view of the area in order to do a remote review? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm trying to save up some money and some vacation time to go up to Owl Moon Labs with Daryl and another buddy of mine, Josh, and see if we can shoot like 2 or 3 days documentary and things like that. Because here are some audio files that he had sent that are it's crazy. So this is like a roaring sound.
That's so cool. I love it.
So he also captured this. Captured that, and he captured this. Those are all literally out behind his house.
Right in the same area.
In the same area. He says they're all over. He's sent me so many things on my phone and Messenger of audio files. He's picked up so many different things when it comes up there. Off camera, you let me know what kind of picture you need of the area, and I'll see if I can get you one. Sure. And I would love to have you back on with a follow-up on that. But so you kind of mentioned that you'd seen.
I could get my friend John to do it as well.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Because he has his own sighting, physical sighting as well, and it's a good one.
Oh, I'd love to have John on.
Yeah, and he used to be one of the hosts of the podcast that I had, and but he was having so much issues with the paranormal in his own home, he had to step away from it.
Yeah,
because like at the beginning, you said I can't remember if it was on camera or not, but when you delve into these things, when you have an interest in these things, you tend to put an antenna up, and things are attracted to you.
I wouldn't really call it an antenna. I would call it a lightning rod.
Sure.
Because
same thing, but
it's a beacon.
Yeah, like I attract dark stuff, unfortunately, sometimes. Like I see shadow people in my family room here in my basement all the time. And I have a friend that can remove them, and I feel bad because I'm always messaging her and saying, "Hey, can you get rid of this thing?
I did it again.
Yeah, I did it again. And my wife, she'll be like, if I go on a paranormal investigation to a haunted house or location, she's like, don't you bring anything home. I'm like, oh, I never do. Wink, wink. Good thing she doesn't listen to these podcasts either. But my friend who gets rid of these things, she remote views like you would not believe. Like she could remote view us right now, or she could remote view me right now, and she'd be like, oh, who are you talking to? Like, oh, you're on your computer. And she lives like an hour drive away from me.
No.
And there have been times. Let me tell you a quick story. So when she goes into a place, her subconscious or whatever, she sees everything, just like like John Bender-Nagel says. If you've heard of him, remote viewing guy. I was talking to her maybe 3 weeks ago. And just about paranormal stuff, and usually she'll pop into my home and she'll blast it with light, like that's what she calls it, positive energy, light, everything, and the dark stuff will run. And I was texting her back, we're going back and forth, and I put my phone down and I was in the kitchen about 5 minutes later washing the dishes. And as I'm standing there washing the dishes, I felt this wave of energy go through my body, and all the hair went up on my arms. It almost felt like, when you stick your tongue on the end of a battery, you get that. Yep. And I was like, son of a bee, she just remote viewed my home. And I turned the water off and I dried my hands and I got on my phone and I texted her and I said, you were just in my house, weren't you? She says, yeah. She says, yeah, about 5 minutes ago. So I was clearing your house with energy. And I said, I could feel it. I said, I felt it. Like, it was incredible. And I told my wife, and she was like, oh, she believes, but she's grew up Catholic, and everything's like Satan, and and all this stuff too, right?
Yeah.
But it was incredible. I'm like, man, oh man, I said, I wish I could do what you do. She said, well, you can. You just, you just need practice and guidance and everything. But amazing. There's so much weird stuff out there.
Yeah. Oh no,
we have no idea.
Oh, I'm telling you, man. Wait till we're off camera. I'll tell you some stuff.
I think you should write a book. I think you should get typing.
I am writing a book, but
good.
I'm busy with family, and I have grandkids, and it's a good time to hang out with those little guys.
You have grandkids? How old are you?
I'm 50, almost 54.
Oh, I'm 53.
Yeah. I'm 53. January 1st is my birthday.
Okay, I'm November.
So you'll be 54.
We got a lot of It's weird, eerie. The universe brought us together.
That's true, man. So hey, let me ask you: you mentioned UFO? Have you had a UFO encounter?
So in 2013, my wife and I. So I live about an hour and a half northwest of Toronto, and so the little town that I'm in is about 20 minutes away from a city, about 130,000 people. And the highway that goes between the two, it's nothing but farms and forest, right? Probably just like rural Minnesota too, right? And my wife and I went to a movie, and I wish for the life of me I could remember if it was the spring or the fall, because there's no leaves on the trees. So I don't know if they're starting to bud or they'd all fallen off. And we went to see a movie, saw The Late Show. We're driving home. Like I said, it's a two-lane highway. It's pitch black out. There's hardly anybody on the road. And we're driving north back home. And ahead of us on the right-hand side is a woodlot, a hardwood. And suddenly, it's almost like someone flipped a switch. This huge green ball, this sphere. It's like the brightest green you've ever seen in your life. Like toxic, like toxic waste green, like you see from the movies or
like that glow.
Like from Ghostbusters, the Slimer, right? But it was this perfect sphere, and it was about the size of a small car. And it was like someone flipped the switch and boom, there it was. And I slowed down and it rose straight up in the air. Not a sound. There was no thrusters. There was no smoke coming out of it. And it rose just above the canopy of the trees. And it shot across the field to the east like a bullet and disappeared. And my wife and I looked at each other and we're both like, what the hell did we just see? And she's like, that's a UFO. I'm like, you're gall darn right, that's a UFO. And that was another story I didn't tell for the longest time. But now, I mean, I tell people everything now, like especially when it comes to the paranormal. I could care less. Like, I don't care what you think of me. My stories are real, and but but I looked it up, and there's videos of these huge green orbs on YouTube. People have caught, and they're flying around. They're defying physics and gravity and everything else. So that's the only visual. Oh, actually, I lied. Maybe so. Yeah, like this is the first time I'm telling this story. So 2 or 3 years ago, I was at my sister's cottage. She's in an area called Georgian Bay, which is just off Lake Huron. Beautiful area. It's like 30,000 islands. And when you're away from the big cities, especially at night, you can see the sky, right? Yeah, Milky Way. Sometimes the Northern Lights, all sorts of great stuff. My son and I, he was 15 at the time. I said, let's go down to the dock and look at the sky, the stars and everything. He says, maybe we'll see some shooting stars and stuff like that. And that's nothing he's ever done before. And it's like, okay, we're laying there, we're looking straight up, and we see these 3 little white pinhead, lack of a better word, UFOs, way up in outer space, I guess, past the stratosphere or whatever. And they're chasing each other. Like they're like zigzagging through the air. And we're watching this. And then a beam of light, I swear to God, a beam of light comes out of one of them, hits the other one, and the thing explodes. And it's not like a Star Wars explosion. It just kind of like pops like little particles, because there's, apparently there's no oxygen in space, right? So what would fuel a fire, right? Right. Nothing. But this little beam of light hit this other one, and it just kind of pops and deteriorates. And these other two take off. My son and I look at each other like, did we just witness like a paranormal or a extraterrestrial dogfight? Yeah. And it was bizarre. I'm like, and I'm thinking, like, who else is watching this? Like, are the governments watching this through telescopes or satellites or whatever? And like, I don't think we look to the skies often enough. And especially if you're in a city, you're not going to see that sort of thing, right? You need to get out of the city, go north, south, east, west, wherever the heck you are. Yep. And look at the night sky.
Get away from that light pollution.
Yeah. And the area that John lives in, he's right on Lake Huron. They have sky watching parties, like people from the community. Really? Because there's UFO like crazy. Because a lot of people say they come in and out of the lake, the water, right?
Oh yeah, I've heard that too.
The old quote, "Watch the water," right? And there's a nuclear power plant just up the road, and they see UFOs there all the time. Like they don't talk about it. They don't tell the public about it, but they see UFOs over this nuclear power plant all the time.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's wild. So those are my 2 UFO encounters.
Dude, so let's change gears. Let's talk about your book. Let's talk about let's talk about where you can find your first book. What's the name of your first book, and where can people find it?
So it's called Strange Happenings, a paranormal investigator story. If you just type in my name, Dan Hammond, in the Amazon search bar, and that's the only place that you can get it, it'll pop right up. It's the first thing that pops up. It's been out for a few years. I tried to self-publish it in the beginning, but it was too much of a pain in the butt. And I found a company in San Diego called I think it's Beyond the Fray Publishing, And I sent the book to them. And usually, like you hear people say, well, it could take 6 months before they even get to look at your book.
Yeah.
But the one lady, she contacted me by the end of the weekend. I sent it on a Thursday or a Friday, and by Sunday, she's like, "We love your book," and she says, we want to publish it." I was like, "Holy cow! Like this is wild." So yeah, strange happenings. So the reason why I call it strange happenings is the paranormal team that I'm involved in or part of. It's called SHIP, SHIP, Strange Happenings, Investigators of the Paranormal. And you can find us on Facebook and take a look at some of our pictures and some of our investigations there.
Cool.
So yeah, and I've got everything from my childhood growing up with that haunted house. I have the little guy, the little person of the forest story in there. I've got the remote viewing, everything.
Nice.
And stuff that doesn't really apply to your cryptid show, but is paranormal for sure.
And then here this is
that's it.
This is your book. And again, you guys can find that by typing in Amazon search bar Dan Hammond, and it'll pop up. So if this is what the kind of stuff that you're into, you're looking to expand your mind and get into more things that kind of interest you, then there you go. Show Dan some love. So you are coming out with another book.
Yeah, and so this one is all about people's encounters with cryptids, and we're talking Bigfoot, Dogman, crawlers, little people, elves, fairies, whatever they want to contact me about. No ghosts, no UFOs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The tentative title is called Monsters Among Us, and I can't believe how well it's coming along. Like, I've only been at it for maybe 2 weeks, and I'm already at 40,000 words.
Oh wow!
Like, it's crazy. And I've got your story to add to it, and thank you for that.
Yeah,
and I've got a whole bunch of other people lined up, in some wild stories. Like one, if you'll allow me to talk about one right here.
Sure.
It's a gentleman that I spoke to last night. He's from he's got a cottage up in northern Ontario, probably about 4 hours north of here. He was riding his dirt bike on a trail. He came to the crest of this hill. He's about to go down. He slams the brakes on, and he thinks he's seeing a black bear at the bottom of the hill. It's only 30 feet away. He's kind of like, what the, like, why didn't it take off? Like, dirt bikes are noisy. Right?
Yep.
He said, why didn't this thing spook? But it was holding a stick in its hand, and he was digging through the dirt. He thinks now, like, looking back, is looking for grubs or something. And he stopped. The bike is still going, like, boom, 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 boom. And this thing stood up and turned around and dropped the stick. And he said it was this big black, probably about 7 to 8 foot tall Bigfoot. And it was and he said the facial expression on this thing was like, oh crap, I'm busted. Yep. I'm like crap. Like, you got me. And he said they stood there looking at each other for about 2 minutes. Like, he got the best look at this thing. He could see its tongue. Like, it opened its mouth to take a deep breath. He said it had a black tongue. I've never heard anyone describe their tongue before.
Me neither.
A black tongue. He said his teeth looked like human teeth. There's no canines. He said they were bigger, obviously, but they were like a yellowish brown. Like, you wouldn't expect Bigfoot to have pearly whites, right?
Right.
Big black, he said, super intelligent eyes. And he said the pec muscles on this thing were massive, like huge. And hands went down to the knees. And one thing that he mentioned to me, and I've never heard it started swaying back and forth slightly. And he looked at its feet, which were huge. But when it applied weight to each foot, the skin almost kind of spread out, like the pads of the feet.
Really?
And I said, that's almost like a natural snowshoe.
Yeah.
Right? If he puts his weight down, it kind of spreads out a bit. It keeps him from sinking into the mud and the snow
Yeah.
it's like an advantage. And he says, yeah, he says, yeah, you're right. And he's looking at this thing and then started to sniff the air. And he said, so it shot off to its left. He said it took 2 huge strides, and then it kind of hunched forward and propelled itself forward with it like a swing of its arms. And boom, and it's thick brush. He says this thing was so quiet going through he said you'd think it would sound like a tank.
Yeah.
The size of it. So he gunned it down, like this guy, like kudos to him for having the big brass cojones to do this. Because he said, I thought I was dead. He says the whole time, he said, I'm dead. This thing's going to rip my arms out of my socket like Chewbacca. And, and I'm toast. So he gunned it to the bottom of the hill, dumped the bike, and he ran into the spot where it ran in. And he says 30 feet away was an even bigger one, but it was reddish brown. Like it wasn't black. And he said this thing was about, what did he say? I wrote the story last night. It's probably about 11 feet tall and 1,000 pounds. And it looked at him, and he said the stench coming off these two was, he said, picture the worst homeless person. This is how he put it. The worst body odor from the worst homeless person you've ever run into, and multiply that by 10. And he said it was so thick, the smell. And this thing looked at him, and it, like the other one, and the black one was gone, but the reddish brown one bolted. And he says he watched as it stepped onto a rock, and the rock had like some moss on the top of it. He said it almost slipped. It almost fell. It almost went, ass over head, ass over tea kettle. And he says he was looking back, it's kind of funny, because you think that they're like these really, dialed in,
reflexes like a cat.
Yeah. But he said it almost took a header, but it kind of caught itself. And he said the speed of this thing, he said, I've never seen anything move so fast in my life. Like you take Usain Bolt, and he couldn't keep up with this thing. And
I have a theory about the smell.
And okay.
I think that's a defense mechanism.
Oh, absolutely. Like a skunk.
Like a skunk, or if you grab a snake, it sprays that musk on you.
Right.
So I think that's what it is. It's a defense mechanism that it's kind of like a rattlesnake. You don't see it, but you hear it.
Yeah.
You don't see them, but you smell them. And I think that this is what they do. They have an ability to.
But unless you're like guys like us who are in the know, like anybody else, a non, paranormal type person going to go, what the hell's that smell? Is that a dead body? And they're going to go crush into the bush and look for the source, maybe, right? But guys like you and I be like, I think we need to go home, right? It's time to hightail it out of here. And so then he told me a year later. So the road into his cottage, it's like 3/4 of a mile long, like his driveway, right? He noticed that he had some tree structures down, like these teepee things. You've seen the wood structures, pictures of them, and he had 3 of them. So he's like, I'm going to go check out the tree structures, go for a little bit of a walk. He stuck his head in. He said he kind of has to brush some brush, part some brush aside to see in. He said there was a little black one, about 5 feet tall, standing in the swamp, like up to its knees. And it looked at him, and he looked at it, and it turned around and took off. But he's like a juvenile or a baby or whatever. Yeah. And he hasn't seen one on his property since. And this was 10 years ago. But he leaves garlic out for them. Apparently they love garlic. And I've heard stories about this before. He'll take cloves of garlic, and he'll stick them in when you look at a tree, some of them have the rough bark. You can jam the garlic in between like the seams of the bark. And this guy's he's the same height as me, 6'7", so he can probably reach pretty high, up to 10 feet. And he says, I jam all these garlic cloves in there. He says, I'll go back the next day, they're all gone. And I said, well, you have to try and debunk things a little bit. And I said, well, maybe it's raccoons or squirrels or birds, who knows, right? So he took a tennis ball, and he sliced it open, and he stuffed it full of garlic, and then he glued it shut. and he left the tennis ball. Like, this is 3 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Like 5, I don't know what the conversion is, but pretty far.
Yeah.
3 kilometers away.
Yeah.
And he left it sitting in that same area. And this was in the fall. Then the winter comes, they close the cottage down because unless you're a snowmobiler or a skier, there's no use of going up there.
Right.
He said in the spring, when they went back to open the cottage, the tennis ball was in his driveway and it was popped open and the garlic was gone.
That's awesome.
And it's like, this is like 5 months later and at 3 kilometers away from where you left it. And I said, they were telling you to fill it back up. Yep. Like, yeah, thanks. We'll take some more. Right.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it was a cool story.
I need to talk to you off camera on some stuff. So you guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I'm going to have you sit in the lobby. But before I do any of this, you guys show Dan some love. Go to Amazon, check out his book, Dan Hammond. Do a search for him in your Google search. I'm sure it'll come up as well. But go into Amazon, do Amazon search for his book, Strange Happenings, a paranormal investigator story. Check him out. Dan, do you got anything else?
As for interactions with Sasquatch, I've had lots of interactions with them. Mm-hmm. I've been growled at a couple times. I've had the foot stompings. I had a tree knocking conversation with one. Yeah. With 3 other people. That was incredible. Yeah. Last year, so when I first got growled, I was laying on a huge boulder underneath some electricity lines, power lines. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to connect with them through my thoughts, like the mind speak thing. I said, "Oh, let's give this a whirl," right? And behind me, at the tree line, which is maybe 20 yards away, I hear this growl. And I know what bears sound like, because there's a ton of them up in the cottage area. And I sat up real quick and I was like, okay, it's time to join the rest of the crowd, because they were like 50 yards away doing their own thing, and they were having a rock clacking conversation. Yeah, with something on the other side of the river. And they're like, "Did you hear the rock clackings that we're doing?" I said, "No." I said, "Did you hear the growl that I just got?" And Peter kind of looked at me and he's like, "Oh, that's not good." And I said, "Well," I said, "out of respect, I popped up." And I said, "Okay, it's time to go." But just before I walked away, I got the foot stomps, where it was the boom, boom, boom on the ground. And it was like an elephant, stomped on the ground. And the place that we were in, it's like, it takes over half an hour to get there, down a winding dirt road. It's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And it's not other people. There's no other vehicles there. The only reason this road exists is so crews can access the power lines. Power lines, yep. Just in case, right? And there's a wooden bridge that goes over the river. And as we're walking back away from the growl and the foot stomping, something does wood knocking about 100 yards away down the river. And I bought this I call it my fish bonker. Yeah. It's like a wooden baton I bought off Amazon. I said, that's good. That's perfect for tree knocking. And I heard the 2 knocks. I did 2 back. Then came 3 knocks, and I did 3 knocks. And then they paused, and I did 2 knocks, and they did 2 knocks back. And then we went back and forth for like a minute, kind of like repeating the knocks. And I thought that was so cool. Because, like I said, it's not a dude. It's not a bear. It's not a moose, like racking its antlers across the, I mean, animals are smart, but not that smart. Right. And we all, the group, we all collectively said, thank you. And we gifted them some watermelon, and we stopped at the chip truck and got like a big thing of French fries for them and left it out for them. And I took I went to one of the woo-woo shops, and I got a whole bunch of crystals. Yeah. Because apparently they really like colored rocks, shiny, colorful rocks. And I put it in like this little green silky bag that I had, and I hung it up on a tree. And so there you go. And maybe one of these days I'll get back up there. Yeah. But the second time I got growled at, this is a real quick story. This is a place called Grundy Lake. It's like 3 hours north of here. Everything's north of here, right? And this guy on his property Like if I could convince this guy to get on your show, you'd be blown away. Like he has seen so many of them, had so many interactions. It's wild. And we went up there for the sole purpose of trying to interact with them, see something. And my friend Tony and I were staying in his camper.
Mm-hmm.
He's got one of those huge, like, Jaybird, or I forget but it's the ones you tow behind your truck, right?
Yeah.
It's got the kitchen and the bedroom in the front,
slide outs, and
all sorts of stuff. And on the last night we were there, I was sleeping in the kitchen area because the kitchen area turns like into a bed.
Yeah.
And it's his camper, so he's in the bedroom at the front in the nice queen size bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up for some reason. It was about 5 a.m., pitch black. And right outside the door, which is like right next to me, I hear this. And it went on for like 10 seconds.
Nope.
And something shoved on the door. Like I could actually see the door kind of bow in a little bit. And I'm thinking, like in my, remember I go back to, I've heard people do the mind speak, and in my head I'm saying to this thing, like, okay, please don't do anything crazy. We're not here to be disrespectful or whatever. We're leaving today, and please don't kill me.
Yeah, please don't rip that wall off.
But I'm a big dude. I worked in the jails for 18 years. I've been stabbed. I've been shot at. I've had all sorts of things happen to me. I've come face to face with, lack of a better word, demonic stuff. Mm-hmm. And like I've been punched in the face by a ghost, literally. And so a lot of things don't scare me, but that growl and that shove on the door, I was like, oh man. Like I was like, please don't. Okay, we're done, right? But
absolutely.
But now I'm thinking, oh, you coward! You should have stuck your head out the door. But might have been the last thing I ever did.
Your buddy would have woke up finding you half in and half out of that camper,
headless Dan.
Yep.
So explain that one to the police, right? Well,
yeah, no kidding.
It was a Bigfoot officer.
Absolutely.
Ripped his head off, and we can't find it. But.
So.
Yeah.
But hey, I appreciate you reaching out, and I appreciate the fact that you would like to have my story in your book. I do appreciate that, and
it's
I appreciate
a good one.
You coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, I've done a million podcasts. I can't even remember half the names of them, and I've done some TV shows and a radio show, and talk way more about the paranormal, like the ghost, stuff than the cryptids. But I've got some investigations coming up at some very active places, so maybe I'll have some more stories for you one day.
That'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, if you hang out in the lobby, I'm going to close up the show, and then I got some stuff I want to tell you.
Absolutely.
It'll warp your mind, I think.
Alrighty.
All right, stand by. All right, everybody, that is the show for tonight. I just want to say thank you to Dan for popping on. Guys, show him some love. Go to Amazon, do an Amazon search for his book. Use his name, Dan Hammond, and it'll pop up. Give him some love. Order that book if it's something you're interested in reading about. I'm telling you, the little person stories in there, his haunted house when he grew up, it is in there, and a bunch of other stuff. So, again, this just kind of proves that there's more to these creatures than meets the eye, you guys. So, try to have an open mind when you hear someone talking and they're telling you something that doesn't kind of match up with what your encounter was or what you expect an average encounter to be like. Because I think an encounter with one of these creatures is anything but, there's no blueprint as to what it's going to come out as. They're a wild animal. Yes. Are they humanoid? Yes. Is there a woo factor? Yes. And I'm learning that more and more when I hear stories from people from around the globe. So with that being said, you guys, as my buddy Josh always says, from mysteries unknown, always stay prayed up. And as I always like to say, remember, you guys, a legend begins with the sighting. You guys have a good night. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?